Nothing more fun than a top 100 prospect update. And we've got that for you today on the call up. We're going to be talking about the newcomers today. Of course, you got Aram Layton. He's Jack McMullen. We got 25 newcomers? Of
Yeah.
course, we graduate prospects a little bit quicker. And I'm really glad this year because there's so many prospects that like technically would have still been on the list. And I just had no interest in keeping them on the list. So 100 at bats, you're off. 30 to 35 innings, you're off. And that allows us to highlight so many more new prospects. You're going to watch Chase Dollander pitch today. He's technically still a prospect.
Right.
No, thank you. I want to talk about a lot of the new and up and coming players.
Cool. Yeah, I'm all the way here for that. I know there are some guys that like pissed you off a little bit, like a Tyler Black, like I'm so done ranking you. AJ Smith Shawver, like I'm so done ranking you, although AJ graduated finally this year, but there are plenty of guys like that. So I always like prefer seeing a complex person that I can learn something new about instead of, oh, what's it going to look like when they get, more opportunities. Now, how are you going to do Jordan Lawler at the next update? Because Lawler's optioned. I assume he's not going to be up for the rest of the year because he's underwhelmed over the last two. So I'm like almost sidetracking you before we even get into the newcomers on this list. But how are you going to go about Lawler if he doesn't play another big league game in 2025?
He's just one of those instances where we just got to eat it and just keep ranking this guy. It's like he might be similar to the Kobe Mayo situation where it's just
It's worse at this
yeah.
point.
Maybe we'll add a caveat where it's like if you've played in parts of 3 big league seasons, like you
We're done.
graduate. I don't care if it's one at bat in parts of 3 big league seasons. You've graduated. But with Lawler, it's tough because it's only been 56 plate appearances.
Yeah, and he's hitting 080 with like 20 punch outs.
Yeah, yeah, it's just brutal. So
It's bad.
and it's hard to judge him on that because he's barely played. But then what am I supposed to ignore that? It's just such a nightmare. And then you got to compare that to a guy in low A or high A or double A, which are all levels he crushed, and that guy may not succeed at the big leagues. So it's just the apples to oranges component is frustrating, and I feel like having the lower barriers for graduation helps mitigate the apples to oranges comparison.
Sure. You want to get into the newcomers to the list?
Let's do it.
All right. So the first one, and I'm going to give you their ranking here. By the way, tremendous job from Aram pumping this out. He stayed up until the wee hours in the morning, but he always does that even when he has nothing to do. But like it was the Tuesday morning work that was the one that finally pushed him over the edge, I think. But here we go. From not ranked to 12, Luis Pena, the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah.
How does somebody go from outside the top 100 to 12?
Well, we kind of talked about it on the last episode with Brenton Del Chiaro, Brewers assistant director of player development, because the question I had for him was kind of the answer to this question, but how did he do this? Which was, how did he go from a guy with below average exit velocities to a guy with borderline plus exit velocities for his age? Because Pena, he flies, he has great bat to ball skills, he has good bat speed, but it hadn't really translated into a ton of impact. And all of a sudden, you see him this year, he goes from a 90th percentile exit velocity of like 100 miles per hour to 106.5 miles per hour this year. And the answer was patterning his moves a little bit more. And that was even something I had in the write-up last year where it was, you could see that he was just kind of out of sync with the upper body and the lower half. And everything was just kind of a little chaotic there. But then also really getting in the weight room and working on some of the functional aspects of his lower half and just strengthening certain components so that he can be a bit more explosive and leverage that twitch that he has. So you're seeing a guy that is still maintaining the plus bat to ball, is still looking like a absolute blazing runner on the base paths, but now is providing above average power, maybe potentially plus. That recipe is going to take you from outside of the top 100 to a top 100 prospect here, because you could dream on plus hit and power and speed. So if you have those things going for you as an 18-year-old in low A who's already doing what he's doing, I mean, this guy just could be an absolute monster, even if he may move off of shortstop.
So can I ask you, like, in this process, you were thinking, okay, Luis Pena versus a guy like Colt Emerson in Seattle. How do you do that? Because it's really apples to oranges.
It really is, and it's tough because Emerson is developed so nicely as a defender as well, and looks like he can be, a solid defensive shortstop. But I look at Emerson, he's going to be 20 years old, which is he's still very, very young. He won't turn 20, I guess, for another month and a half. But you want to see him start to slug a little bit more. You want to see those EVs translate a little bit more. And
Sure.
it's a 60% ground ball rate. Whereas you look at what a Luis Pena is already doing at 18 years old, at just one level below that, and you see a guy that's posting about the same bat to ball in terms of just the contact rates, but hitting the ball in the air a little bit more, and EVs that are already ahead of Emerson, which is kind of crazy given that, again, Pena is going to be 18 for the whole year. It's tough because, again, I think Pena, candidate to potentially move to third base or
Yeah.
second. It's a plus arm, so that helps. Where Emerson looks like he's going to stick it short, but give me the plus runner potentially who may have even more power in the tank and is already ahead, I think, of Emerson in terms of where he's at with his swing and just the path and everything along those lines. So I think it's really hard to argue against where Pena's already at and then start to
Yeah.
dream on what could be soon.
So it sounds like it came down to the line of questioning or the line of like acknowledgement of skill set. So like Emerson, oh, he could do this, he could do this, and then Pena was he has done this, he has done this.
And he still has the could too. So you
Yeah,
have this
sure.
this exciting blend of the two. And I think you even just look at the field to hit with Pena. It looks
Yeah.
like it's a little bit ahead of where Emerson was at 18 and potentially even ahead of him now.
Got you. All right, George Lombard Jr., the New York Yankees, is a newcomer to the list, and he checks in at 23. Why did he get 75 plus place jump?
Yeah, I mean, he was a just missed at the start of the season. We said like, hey, we want to see I would say the swing adjustments that got plenty of public, they got a lot of attention, which as it goes, like that's where I understand that the people getting frustrated with like Yankees prospect fatigue and Dodgers prospect fatigue because if a guy does something, definitely gets a little bit more shine. I mean, we saw his promotion to Double A. It was tweeted by Jeff Passan. Like it's a little different, but the swing adjustments are for real. And I think you're seeing that through the batted ball data, the ability to drive the ball in the air more consistently now. He's hitting the ball harder. It hasn't totally translated into game power just yet, but he's spraying the ball, with some authority to all fields. The thing that really stands out to me is you're seeing the defense continuously improve at shortstop where he looks like he can be an above average defender there. And then the swing decisions. He looks like a vet there. I mean, you look at the plate discipline grade, there's two guys that have like a 70 present, 80 future, and that's George Lombard Jr. in the plate discipline department, and that's Emmanuel Rodriguez. And with Lombard, to already be so patient, but it's not just that, it's leveraging his advantage counts. He's rarely, taking a pitch that he should pull the trigger on, but he's also almost never expanding. Being that advanced as a hitter who's already been thrusted to Double A is so exciting. And then you could still dream on more because he's 6'3", 190, has the bloodlines, has all the potential, where this could be a guy that's just 55s across the board. And you're doing that at shortstop, you're going to be a good player for a long time.
Only other newcomer that's inside the top 30 is Franklin Arias, the Boston Red Sox, and he came in a spot behind George Lombard Jr. at 24 on this list. 19-year-old shortstop in high A. Why is he a top 30 prospect?
I mean, Arias, he might be a top 10 guy by the end of this year, and I think the buzz that he's creating is pretty exciting. A guy that bat to ball wise looks like he's encroaching on that plus territory. He's handled high A with ease, which is the other amazing part. I mean, he's been pushed pretty aggressively too, still 19 years old, and he has been dismantling high A. He's ambushing a little bit, and that's the one thing that I think was maybe when you're splitting the hairs between an Arias and a Lombard, like he's a bit more aggressive. Arias is, and it's been working. Clearly, he's hitting 360 so far this year. But another guy that just has the defensive ability. He was a glove first guy when he was first signed, and then also is starting to tap into a little bit more pop. I think Lombard has more power potential, and I think Lombard probably is going to get on base and just, I think, be a little bit more well-rounded. But I think Arias has better bat-to-ball skills and could potentially even be a better defender at shortstop. So you have two really young, exciting shortstops here who do a lot of things well. And it's kind of that tools across the board, average to above average across the board outlook with ahead of your year's polish that just makes it really easy to thrust these guys towards the, top third of the top 100 list because the floor is high, but then there's also so much more to dream on.
Got you. Now we pivot to a pitcher here, and this is inside the top 40 at 38. Nolan McLean, not McLean. Nolan McLean of the New York Mets, like Matt McLean, but it's spelled McLean. 23-year-old, was a two-way guy, obviously, decided to be a pitcher full time. The CAG's opposite, and man, is it working. You talked about it, spin machine for McLean. Like, who can he be as a major league starting pitcher?
That's a great question. I don't even really know if there's like a pitcher that necessarily throws like him right now. I'd have to think further about that because like it's a low release, but it's not like he's that like low release high carry type of guy. It's this three quarters release where he's
It's kind of
getting
a
some.
sinker, isn't it?
Yeah, it's funny. He gets like a force. He throws a four seamer that kind of looks like it's somewhat of a dead zone fastball, but it's not really a dead zone fastball because it's this three quarters release that really makes it play more like run and ride from a 5-3 release height. Then you have that two seamer or sinker that really runs from that release height as well and can tie up righties, but it also allows that four seamer to play up a little bit more. And then, as you alluded to, this guy has a very unique feel to spin it. His curveball, which he doesn't throw as much as his sweeper, which by the way, the sweeper, just the spin rates are still ridiculous for that. Averages like 2750, but it's just that late sharp bite and break to it that makes it one of the best sweepers in minor league baseball. His curveball that he'll mix in, it's this big sweeping curveball, averages over 3,000 RPM. So it just shows you his feel to be able to spin it and how that's kind of allowing him to get this late break and action on his pitches. And then he added this upper 80s touching 90-mile-an-hour cutter that has just given him a different angle. And he's mixing and matching these pitches and giving you so many different looks. He's so hard to game plan for. He can also get the ground balls. He's also mixing in a changeup that looks like he can be a really solid pitch. And he's a guy that looks like he could just kitchen sink you. And usually those kitchen sink type of pitchers are dealing with a bunch of fringy offerings, but he could be kitchen sink approaching it with a bunch of average or better offerings, which is, pretty scary. So I think he could kind of push himself up another notch. And right now it looks like a high probability number 4 starter with the upside of a number 3. But as he's focusing more on pitching, because he's not pitched that much in his baseball life, I could see him pushing closer, to that high end 3, fringe 2 upside if he can learn to execute and find a little bit more consistency.
I tried to like squint and see somebody when you were explaining the fastball slider combo, and like the guy that I saw was Hunter Green, but Green has added more vert to
Yeah,
his
he's a little bit
fastball.
more
Like,
straight and verty.
yeah, but it's like if Green threw a sinker, like I guess that's what it is. But then you've got some other pitches, and we're not saying he's going to be Hunter Green because Green has been one of the best arms in baseball since the start of last year. But like that's kind of who I'm seeing right now when you
It's
explain who he could be.
And it's interesting though because it's the way he goes down on the mound where he kind of drops down body wise, but his arm again really gets to that three quarters, low
Like
three quarters.
that's kind of what Green does
Yeah,
too. You know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
very body heavy, and then like there's a whip of the arm.
It's almost as if like you turn some of the Brady Singer sliders up too.
Sure,
Like,
sure.
you could kind of actually get more out of the stuff and a little bit more of the feel to spin it. And yeah, I'm excited because you put him in that Mets org as turned into such an impressive development factory for these arms. And I
Yeah.
think he's got to be as exciting of a template as you can have.
Gage Jump of the Athletics is the next guy, and Gage Jump is I mentioned this on the Just Baseball show. Someone that many people have probably never heard of, but Gage Jump is killing high A baseball right now. What made Jump one of the top prospects in the game?
Him killing double A baseball after that,
Okay,
I think was a
sure.
big part of it too.
He's at 57, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Athletics, they've gone so hitter heavy in the draft and they've picked their spots for the arms. And I think this looks like one of the biggest steals in the draft this past year. He was a comp B pick at 73. And I don't think anyone thought too much of it. Thinking maybe he's a higher floor guy because he's got a good fastball and, lefty that may end up getting fast tracked as a reliever. But he saw his fastball tick up from 93 miles per hour in his draft year to 94.7 miles per hour, really 95 this year so far through 10 starts. And when you're a guy that gets plus vert, gets plus carry on that fastball, to see a 2-tick jump in your velocity, I mean, that's going to take that fastball from above average to, I would say 65 grade potentially.
Yeah.
When you're going from a 5.5 release height and getting 18 inches of vert at 95 miles per hour as a lefty with a little bit of that deception built into his release, it makes sense that he's generating ridiculous whiff rates. It's a chase rate north of 30% on the fastball because he gets that chase at the top. In zone whiff rate at 27%. And opponents are hitting 165 against his fastball between high A and double A, despite the fact that he's throwing it nearly 60% of the time. Then the other thing that I was interested in is, okay, great fastball, had a great fastball in college. It's even better now, but how good are the secondaries going to be? Because they weren't great for him last year. Two distinct breaking balls, both have been money for him this year. He's landing, the sweeper and this curveball for a strike at a combined 66% rate, which is way better than he was at last year. And, there's almost this unintentional variance in the shapes that I think makes it even more difficult for hitters to feel comfortable in the box. But even with the variance of the shape, he's still landing it in the strike zone consistently. So he has these two breaking balls. He's even mixing in a changeup a little bit. That pitch is far behind. But those breaking balls working off of a fastball that really speeds hitters up and sets the tone, I think gives him a really exciting arsenal that could be middle rotation.
Cool. If Babe Ruth and Mike Piazza had a baby, would it be the Tigers catching prospect Josue Briceno, who's the 59th prospect in baseball?
I wish I like that you said Piazza, so you couldn't go with like a defensive catcher because
he's a first baseman masquerading as a catcher.
Yes, correct. But oh my gosh, is he absolutely crushing baseballs right now? And we got to see him put on a show in the Arizona Fall League, and I know you got to see him take BP, which you specifically said was one of the more impressive batting practice sessions that we had seen in a while.
But there are a lot of guys that are first team all batting practice. Like Joey Gallo has the best BP session I've ever seen. And like Gallo's a pitcher now. So take with that what you will.
But this is a guy that was posting good contact rates at the lower levels and then missed some time last year with injury, came back from that injury and looked much better with his lower half with his swing and started to elevate more. And then he went to the fall league and that continued where he was elevating more and slugging. And then you see him now this year in high A where he's 6'4", 200, and now he's 20 years old. That man strength is starting to show up more, but he still has this decent feel to hit for such a powerful guy. And then you also have now the ability to elevate where his ground ball rate's just 32%. To find that much more depth in your swing when that ground ball rate was 46% last year and north of 50% before he hit the IL. I mean, you pair that with a 90th percentile exit velocity of 107.5 miles per hour and a hard hit rate north of 50%. Raw EVs wise, he's in, the top tier in minor league baseball. Then you have him hitting the ball at optimal angles. Then you also have him being patient in the box and drawing his walks. And you have a guy that could be one of the more exciting power hitters in minor league baseball who's hit 12 homers in 36 games. So it's really converting that raw power that had been there into game power while tapping into more raw power. And if he can get by enough to where he can catch, once or twice a week, that helps his profile. But, I think even if it's a first base only, which we're kind of expecting here, the bat is too damn good to not be in the top 100.
Tons of catching concerns with Joe Mack at 61, right?
I wouldn't say so. Yeah, I know. You probably hear it all the time. The Marlins, the organization, they have to be just amazed with how impressive he is defensively.
The amount of times that I've heard the word special as it relates to Joe Mack defensively is insane. And I say that because it's a consensus around the organization that this guy is beyond his years defensively. The acumen is next level. He won the minor league Gold Glove last year at the catching position. He's amazing. He handles the staff as well as anybody. And oh, by the way, he's hitting. Yeah. And that's what makes him the number 61 prospect in the game.
Exactly, because he had the floor of a backup catcher with how good he was defensively. And then as you started to see the power show up, you're like, okay, well, this guy looks like he can be that maybe low batting average, but running into homers. And I mean, we've seen guys like Mike Zunino carve out great careers because if you can run into 20-plus homers and defend at a really high level, the barrier to be a primary catcher hit tool-wise could be 30 great.
We were calling Cal Raleigh Mike Zunino. I mean, dude, we call a lot of people Mike Zunino.
Yeah, and look at Cal Raleigh now.
Yeah, I know.
But, it's amazing seeing how much he's improved in terms of while the defenses went from from above average to beyond plus, you've seen the plate discipline improve. You've seen the game power improve. And we figured there'd be a bit of a learning curve at AAA because breaking balls had given him some whiff issues at points. But the EVs are plus. He's elevating consistently. And when you're doing that as a left-handed hitting catcher, even if that hit tool is 30 grade, which I think it can be better than, and I think he's taken steps towards it being better. If the plate discipline's above average and the power is above average, with his defensive ability, he's going to rack up WAR quite quickly. And we talk about, again, the offensive barrier for a catcher. He's not going to be Patrick Bailey defensively, but he's also not going to be Patrick Bailey offensively. So that just shows you, again, Patrick Bailey's been one of the worst qualified hitters in Major League Baseball, and you're not even thinking twice about taking him out of the lineup because he's a positive player for you when he's doing what he's doing defensively. So you imagine if Max 25% less of that defensively, but significantly better upside wise offensively, you have a great chance at having an above average primary catcher here.
Can you rank these three tandems for me before we move on? The Marlins future catching tandem of Agustin Ramirez and Joe Mack, the White Sox future catching tandem of Kyle Teel and Edgar Quintero, and the Royals future catching tandem of Blake Mitchell and Carter Jansen.
I would go Marlins because just Augustine is doing it in the show. Like the offense is just crazy.
Freako.
And then I'd go with the White Sox because Teal is starting to look really good on both sides of the ball.
And Caro's hitting like 290 in the big leagues.
Caro's been swinging it pretty well. And then I'd go with the Royals. But that Royals tandem could easily pop up and surprise people. It's just unfortunate right now. You've got Blake Mitchell dealing with a wrist issue. But I think those two could end up, having as much upside as either of the tandems.
Now we get into a bit of the clumping on the back end, and this is usually where you're going to see newcomers on a list. Like, it's pretty rare that a newcomer jumps in at number 12, like Luis Pena, or even at 61, like Joe Mack. But Ryan Sloan, the right-handed pitcher for the Seattle Mariners, is a newcomer to the top 100 list, and Sloan checks in at 68, just ahead of Charlie Soto and Jonah Tong, right behind Charlie Condon and Jefferson Rojas. Sloan, mature beyond his years. You see it in the delivery. Is the stuff loud enough to be a mid to frontline starter, or does it just scream like midline starter?
I think right now it looks like a middle rotation type of arsenal, but he's 19 and he won't be 20 until January 29th. So I imagine that stuff, when you look at how low effort and smooth the delivery is from a 6'5", 220-pound 19-year-old, you wonder, okay, he's sitting 95 right now. I don't think it would be far-fetched to imagine that he could be sitting 97, within a couple years. And if he's doing that, that's going to push the arsenal up a little bit. That sweeper, which is his best pitch right now and is just gnarly, is 84. Could you imagine that sweeper at averaging 86? Like, that's going to be devastating. And then the splitter that he started to show that I think has good potential, he's just not throwing it a ton, is this like hard, almost power split at 89.5. If he's ticking up across the board, that's going to be an arsenal that looks like it could be closer to a number 2 starter. And then he's mixed in this cutter that, again, throwing harder instead of 87, 88, that cutter at 90 can be an interesting pitch as well. So you have this arsenal that I think is high floor because the delivery is so good, because he's a strike thrower, and because you already see good stuff. But I think it's very easy to dream on great stuff, which could easily push him closer to, that high-end 3, borderline number 2 upside.
Not many high-floor 19-year-old pitchers in minor league baseball, but
especially
he is a high-floor.
I don't think so.
No, but he is a high-floor 19-year-old prep righty. All right, we're going to get to a vert machine in a moment. Quick break. That vert machine is Jonah Tong of the New York Mets, and Tong checks in right at number 70, 21-year-old in Double-A. He's been doing this with the fastball for a year and a half now. What finally pushed him into the top 100?
Everything else, which is the funny part, right? Because all we hear about is the fastball.
But like the bedrock, like a fastball, if you have one pitch, it's not going to make you a top 100 prospect.
It also helps that the fastball is
awesome.
And even better. Like he averaged 93 last year. He's averaging 95 now. But even that alone wouldn't have been enough to catapult him to where he's at now. The changeup, man, that was a pitch that wasn't even really a factor for him last year. And it's been one of the more effective changeups in minor league baseball this year, in large part because it's working off of a fastball that hitters are gearing up and cheating for, but also because from that release point, that over the top, like we talk about, where it's like that reminiscent aspects of like Tim Lincecum, it's got to be so hard to pick up that changeup from that release point with the way that he maintains his arm speed. And that changeup has generated some of the best in zone whiff rates in minor league baseball. So in zone contact wise, are hitters have an in zone contact rate of 47.7% against his changeup this year. I understand it's not the biggest sample size in the world, but that's still insane. 44 in zone swings. And that means what, 23 of them are whiffs?
Yeah.
That's out of this world. And then you know that four seamer with that carry is going to get huge in zone whiff as well, which it has. 33% in zone whiff rate, which, flip that around to 67% zone contact for hitters. So between the fastball changeup combination, hitters have little chance there. And then the curveball hasn't been there for him as much, and that was previously his best pitch. So you're looking at that and saying, or his best secondary pitch, and you're looking at that and saying, okay, if that pitch comes along and gets back there for him a little bit more, like he's throwing it for a strike 47% of the time right now, he could be absolutely overpowering. So that's the other wrinkle that I think is holding him back from being a tier 1 pitching prospect, is not only the curveball consistency, it's just overall command. And I think that's going to come, as he maybe learns to repeat his delivery a little bit more, but that might just be a difficult delivery to repeat. We've seen starts where he is filling up the zone, and that gave us, a 2-start stretch there where when he walked 2 in that 2-start stretch, it was 12 2/3 innings, 2 hits, 21 strikeouts. But we've also seen where even when he's walking guys, he can mitigate it, where the subsequent 2 starts in Double-A, he walked 8 in 10 innings, but he only allowed 3 earned runs and struck out 13. So he's definitely a guy that can get away with a higher walk rate. But as you know, even if you have a 70 grade fastball and the changeup's great, major league hitters are going to shrink you a little bit, and they're going to adjust. And when you're on, you got to really be on with those 2 pitches. But until he has a curveball that's consistent enough that hitters have to respect it, that's the last little piece there. But when you tick up 2 miles per hour and you spawn a changeup that looks like a plus pitch as well, you're going to jump into the top 100.
Can I give you like a crazy comp? And you're going to need to stretch because like the velocity windows are just different, but I also think that it makes a lot of sense. Like Tong is like if Marco Estrada threw 8 miles an hour harder. Like, do you remember him? I mean, check out some of the vert numbers on Marco Estrada. It was 88, but it was the vertiest thing you've ever seen in your entire life. And it was from a directly over the top release, a lot like Tong. And then he would drop this changeup off, and the separation was amazing. And he was like the best fastball changeup guy in baseball in like 2016 or whatever. But it was outlier riding fastball, and then it was a changeup off of that. If Estrada threw 95 instead of 85, it would kind of look like Tong right now in the minor leagues.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. And what's fascinating is, I'm glad you mentioned the shape separation. That's what made Estrada so special, is like the total separation, which is going to be, the difference in induced vertical break and the difference in horizontal movement. And I think Jonah Tong's shape differential between his fastball and his changeup is as wide of a margin as just about any in minor league baseball. I think he gets like 20 inches of total separation. So, I mean, that is elite territory there. So when you're doing that, and at those velocities, and at the fact that he's also generating about 10 miles per hour in velocity separation, it's a really, really unique combination there. And again, it's just going to come down to the command and consistency. If that continues to come along, he could be a monster.
I think that might be my comp of the year. Last year, my comp of the year was Basayo to Rafi Devers, and my comp this year is Jonah Tong to Marco Estrada. So I think that's my comp of the year. Sal Stewart is the next guy that we got to talk about of the Cincinnati Reds. You have long been high on Sal Stewart, I think because he's from South Florida, but the 21-year-old is playing really well in Double-A with Chattanooga.
Yeah, I really like the swing out of high school, and it was definitely a guy that I was following pretty closely after the draft, and he's pretty much hit at every single stop. What would keep him pretty much just always on the just missed list was, okay, he's probably going to be limited to a fringy third base or second base. He's going to need to slug. And the field of hit has always been there. The approach has been pretty good. But why aren't these plus EVs translating into more game power? We're still not really seeing that happen, but I've also gotten to the point here where I'm looking at a Sal Stewart and I'm saying, okay, well, he's 21 in Double-A. He's never striking out, and he really has mitigated his strikeout rate at every stop. He's not walking as much this year, but I think that'll creep back up. The EVs are comfortably plus, and he hits the ball hard so consistently, where it's a hard hit rate of 52%. If he's a guy that just, if it's more of that Yandy Diaz light type where the EVs are so high, the contact rates won't be that good, but the contact rates are good, and it turns into more doubles than homers, you can still be very productive that way. And you're going to have a high BABIP, which we've seen. I mean, he has a 377 BABIP this year. And some people may look at that and say, oh, well, he's going to regress. Probably not if you're 52% of your batted balls are 95 plus. So
It's still regressing.
He's a guy that I think is going to be able to, yeah, I think, sustain high BABIP numbers. But then you imagine him going into Great American Ballpark. A lot of those doubles are still going to turn into homers. Yeah. And I think that's a guy that's really going to elevate out there. But he's also 21. So he's got more time still to try to find a little bit more loft in that swing and elevate a little bit more consistently. But when you have the blend of raw power and bat to ball here, and at least he's hitting the ball this consistently hard in games, it's hard to keep a guy like this outside of the top 100 when he's doing what he's doing as a 21-year-old in Double A.
I think it's interesting. Like, I'm not saying you've waffled on Stewart versus Cam Collier, but I just feel like they kind of flip-flop throughout the Reds organization a lot over your last however many updates. Like, what has Stewart done to surpass Collier, or what has Collier not done to get leapfrogged by Stewart?
You know, it's funny because it's not like Stewart's like some wizard defensively, but just the fact that I think he can play.
He can do it.
A fringy third, where Collier, it's going to be first, and he's going to need to, he's going to need to mash. And that's okay. I think he could mash, and he made those mechanical adjustments that allowed him to, Collier, that is, mash in the second half of the season in high A. But when it's a bat first profile, that's where the proximity matters even more to me, because you really have to look at the production there. And I think when you look at a Sal, like the blend of hit and raw power is I think better, where you may be able to dream on a little bit more game power. I think you definitely can dream on more game power with Collier, but I don't know if he's going to hit enough to consistently get to that game power that would make it a big enough difference from a Sal. I think the floor is just a little bit higher. And then Collier probably still would have snuck into the back end of the list, but, just banged up this year. He's just now working his way back. But, Collier still has his issues of putting the ball on the ground a little bit too consistently as well. And you're seeing, a Sal Stewart who's less than a year older doing it in double, where Collier's hurt to start the year and, probably going to go back to high A, I'd imagine, or maybe they'll sign him to double. We'll see. It's just all the little things are just a little bit ahead.
Another red. Oh, never mind. Wait, Gavin Lux is your red. Mike Sirota, the LA Dodgers, is number 74 now. Sirota, 21-year-old in high A. The best player in minor league baseball to this point this year. And I went to fact check because I was looking during the Just Baseball show. He is the only guy in full season minor league baseball among qualified hitters with a WRC plus over 200. He's like 25 points better than the next best person. I'll pull that up to confirm while you gush over Mike Sirota.
It's funny because I was a little skeptical in low A, and we talked about this on the Just Baseball show. I was a little, I understand it was Northeastern, but this was a guy that was a college bat that was expected to go in the top 10. Really struggled in the first half, and then it was enough to make him fall pretty significantly, even though he had a great second half of the season, because he's not playing top end competition there. Falls to the Reds, great spot there to get him, and I think they did a good job to draft him. And yes, they turned him into a big league piece, but they may be regretting it a little bit here, because Sirota, you look at the mechanical adjustments he's made. He was very crouched at Northeastern. Now he's more upright. When he was doing better in the second half, he closed himself off, and I think that was just a little bit of just like a, let me mitigate what I'm dealing with right now, and we'll fully go back to the drawing board in the offseason. By closing himself off, he was able to stay on the baseball a little bit longer. Guys aren't throwing hard enough in that conference anyways, so he wasn't going to get beat inside. And the big issue for him was kind of flying open at points, and that was able to hedge that in the time being. But now he's made some adjustments going into this season that have allowed him to really look like a completely different hitter. When I looked at the data, I had to go back and watch the video because I couldn't believe it. For him to be hitting the ball so much harder with wood than he was with metal last year is quite shocking. I mean, you had a 90th percentile exit velocity with metal last year of 103.5 miles per hour. And through 33 games this year between low A and high A, you have a 90th percentile exit velocity of 108 miles per hour. He didn't hit a single batted ball 112 last year with metal, and he's already done that, I think, multiple times with wood. He's more upright, he's more athletic, and it seems like he has found a way to engage that lower half and tap into this rotational explosion that made him that perceived top 10 pick going into last year. So it's in there, and you're really seeing it now, but I didn't realize this much was in there. So it's been crazy to see him completely add just several notches of power to the equation here, because I think there was some concern bat to ball wise, ultimately. And now you can palate that because he can play an above average center field. He's producing plus EVs, and he can run a little bit, and the approach was always great. So even if he's a 40 grade hitter, you're looking at potentially plus plate discipline, plus power, with the ability to play an above average center. And then the floor is so high because he demolishes lefties, to where in the lesser case scenarios, lower end outcome, he's a platoon option that can play all three outfield spots and crush lefties. So you have a really, I think, well-rounded player here, even with the hit tool potentially being fringy at best. I cannot believe how much power is here with Sirota, and the fact that he's producing this many 110s after barely producing any, last year.
His ISO, as it stands right now, is at 328, which is just an absurd number. Like CJ Kafis, who's been really solid so far this year, is at 225 in terms of an isolated power number. Sirota is over 100 points greater than him in ISO at 328. And by WRC plus, among players with 150 or more plate appearances in the minor leagues, Sirota's 208 WRC plus is 27 points better than Jacob Reimer, who we're going to talk about in a moment. He's second. So minimum 150 plate appearances among minor leaguers. 208 WRC plus for Sirota is the best by 27 points.
That's crazy. And then you think, okay, well, he was doing it in low A. Let's see him do it in high A. And he's a little banged up right now, but he is doing it in high A. First 9 games there, 14 hits, 2 homers, 4 doubles. And I mean, you're seeing that and you say, okay, he may have really found something here.
Yeah. Eduardo Quintero of the LA Dodgers is number 77. Why do you have an overwhelming Dodger bias?
we had to get one in. We had to. Quintero is another guy, just all the feedback I kept getting, Sirota and Quintero. And this was from people of all different backgrounds, that would not have any vested interest in the Dodgers. If anything, would rather them not be in there. So, just seeing it from that perspective. But I think with Quintero, that was a guy that I probably had an easier time seeing him be on the list before really diving deeper into it. Sirota was one where I kept hearing it. I'm like, fine, let me really dive into these mechanical changes. And you saw them. With Quintero, though, this is a dude that, again, it may be hit over power, but he has made some impressive adjustments as well. He's cut his ground ball rate by about 10% I say hit over power over hit.
Yeah.
It may be power over hit, but when you're a guy that cuts your ground ball rate by 10%, when you're probably going to be power over hit, that's really encouraging. It's honestly a very similar profile to Sirota. The raw EVs aren't as good, but he's significantly younger. I think has a potential to make more strides bat to ball wise, and is a better runner slightly. Or at least I would say a wash as a runner with the potential to be a better defender because he's younger. But this is another guy that can play an above average center field, has plus plate discipline. And when you cut that ground ball rate by 10%, you're going to see that game power really start to shine through. And it has this year, where he is just slugging way more than he was last season. There's some in zone whiff, and I think that will be, part of his game. But again, when you hedge that with good swing decisions and potentially above average power as a plus runner who can play center field, there's some pressure that's taken off of that bat. And I think it's another guy that you're going to see have a lot of helium throughout this year.
Next guy, Caleb Bonemer of the White Sox. And I didn't realize the White Sox draft strategy until right now when I look back on this on the draft tracker. They overslotted Hagen Smith at number 5 overall by like $250,000. And then they overslot Bonemer by nearly like $800,000. And then they overslot their 3rd round guy, Blake Larson, by $200,000. So they overslotted and then they just kind of punted round 7 through 10, which is fascinating to me. But Bonemer was a guy that was considered, like top 10 prep prospect last year in the draft. And then he fell to the 2nd round, but I guess it's not really a fall if you sign for $800,000 overslot. What made him a top 100 prospect now?
Yeah, I think you're seeing why he had that first round steam as well. It's been the raw power already that you're seeing in the polish at the plate. I mean, he's a high school guy who slipped a little bit with his draft stock because there was some concerns about where the swing was at that spring of high school. And then you see him in the bridge league, and all the buzz was that the swing looked a lot better, that he's finding the barrel consistently. And then you're seeing him just continue to do that now in low A as a 19-year-old. The exit velocities are plus. The approach is what really stands out to me too. His feel for the strike zone is fantastic, and he looks like he could have plus or better plate discipline. And then he's probably still a candidate to move to third, but he's not this automatic like, okay, like ticking time bomb. We're just delaying the inevitable with him at short. He might be able to make it work there. If not, again, it would be an above average third base. But when you're pairing the patience that he has with at least average, I'd say slightly above average contact rates, and then plus EVs. And then the other thing is his swing is very simple. It almost looks like it could border on stiff because he's so simple, but he has enough, I think, just enough mobility in there to make it work. He's elevating very consistently as well. I'd like to see a bit more malleability though. Like he's not the best in terms of you look at out of zone contact, being able to spoil, but that becomes significantly less concerning when you're chasing at a 16% clip. So this looks like a guy that could walk at a good clip, make good swing decisions, and then dominate within the zone enough to be a successful hitter that could push to 20 home runs and hit plenty of doubles, which could more than handle a move to third base. So doing what he's doing at 19 years old is really impressive.
Another, it's funny, like we kind of transitioned from lower level position player to upper level arm who got to AAA last year. Robby Snelling of the Miami Marlins, he started so well, right? April ERA at 2.4 through 5 starts there, 4 starts at a 6.16 ERA in the month of May. Where's the concern? What changed from a hot April?
Yeah, I think it was the command a little bit that went awry for him. And as you know, when we talked about it with him on the show, Robby was saying how he basically made some pretty decent changes to his delivery to find more velocity and find more consistency. And you saw that. You saw him get back to that strike throwing in the early going. But most importantly, you saw that fastball velocity not only get back to where it was in his first pro season where he took, minor league baseball by storm, you also saw it actually exceed that, where he's averaging 94.3. On top of that, you saw him gain an inch and a half of induced vertical break. So you have a fastball gain 2 ticks and an inch of induced vertical break with better command. That's going to be, I think, very encouraging. He also talked about the curveball that the Padres kind of had him scrap. Now he's throwing it again like that was his bread and butter, 2 years ago. And that pitch has been great for him as well. But you imagine a pitcher when you're refining your mechanics and going to a year where things are a little bit different. I'm sure it can be easy for those to get away from you for a little bit of a stretch. And we saw that for a 3-start stretch where he walked 4, 5, and 4. But then the last 2 starts after that, he went 6 innings, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 8 Ks. And then the next start after that, 7 innings, 3 runs, 1 walk, 6 Ks as well. So you're seeing him settle back in and fill up the zone. He's so conscious of his body. He's so athletic that I think what he found, it's just more a matter of repeating it. But I think he clearly found what he needs to throw more strikes. And then I think the improved fastball shape, velocity, has also helped his changeup now look like an average third pitch. And he's also added this gyro cutter this gyro slider, that can be a fine 4th pitch just to give him another look. So you have a better fastball, 2 pitches that, are looking far different than they did last year, and a new pitch on top of that with better overall command. He just screams number 4 starter to me. And when you have such a high probability number 4 starter, good chance he's going to be in the top 100.
I'm going to shoot you through 80 through the end of this list semi-rapid fire in a moment. But before that, we'll take one more quick break. Okay, I want 3 sentences or less, and I'll allow you to go a little bit longer on this guy, Jacob Reimer of the New York Mets. We mentioned him a little bit earlier on in the program. Aside from Sirota, he's been the best hitter in minor league baseball to this point.
He's been awesome. And this is a guy that gets a lot of credit for how much he likes to, nerd out about his swing and dive into the mechanics and try to tinker and find the right things for himself. And didn't have an opportunity to do that last year because he was hurt for the majority of the season. Got to make up for some lost time in the Arizona Fall League where you started to see him make some adjustments, and then really showed up this year, heading into 2025 with much better mechanics. Like he was previously stacked on his backside with his back knee like bowed out towards home, which if you think about it, if your knee's bowed out towards home and you try to sink back into that leg, the first move from that position is going to be to push out of it, right? So he was pushing out of it and it was causing the barrel to drag and, affecting his power and affecting his path. Now he's a little bit more upright and I think just more focused on a coil instead of really sinking. And that coil is giving him more rhythm and he gets to his slot more easily and his hands are a little bit higher. And I think all of those things have made it easier for him to get on plane and just also execute what is comfortably above average bat speed. He's doing this in high A now where you're seeing him put up, as you mentioned, some of the best numbers in the minor leagues, an OPS near 1,000. The exit velocities are plus. The contact rates have been good. The swing decisions are good. He's not the best defender in the world. It's kind of the Sal Stewart conversation here. But when you're producing, 88% in zone contact rate and 90th percentile of 106, and you have tangible mechanical adjustments to show it, and you're also, hitting the ball hard to all fields and walking, I think this is one of the more well-rounded offensive profiles at the lower levels. And reminder, he missed out on some key reps, and he's 21 for the entirety of the season, and he's making this leap.
I think that might have been 20 sentences, but I did allow you the liberty to go long on Jacob Reimer.
So that's all I heard, and so I ran with it.
Got you. Okay, now we go to 5 sentences or less. Let's go. Let's shoot for 5. Yeah, you know what? Let's shoot for 4 because I know it's going to be 5 pretty much every time. Carlos Lagrange of the New York Yankees. Is it as simple as big man, long arm, throw hard, find strike zone?
Yes, and I think buying into what's required to throw strikes and get healthy and do all those things the Yankees kind of talked about in the rehab process because he was injured with a back issue last year. They felt like he really bought in to conditioning and the mechanics and the delivery and everything like that. Guy throws 98 with run and ride, and then you have just nasty secondaries off of that. So it is as simple as 6'7" guy throw hard and touch 101. But then you also have this patented Yankee sweeper and a gyro slider off of that and a changeup now that looks like it can be average. He went from walking 20% of guys last year to walking like 7% this year, and he's just overpowering hitters.
Jhostynxon Garcia, why is he so much more than just a Jeopardy question? That was so cool that he was
crazy.
on Jeopardy.
I thought that was like fake. I couldn't believe it. That was really cool.
I couldn't believe it, but the password, it was a Jeopardy question, a prospect in the top 100.
That helped his case, but also
sure,
just proving that the approach wouldn't do him in because he is a guy that is aggressive and he's also a guy that's a little stiff in the box. He's strong and he gets his A++ swing off consistently. And sometimes those types of hitters, I get worried that they may only have one swing for one location. And especially when you're chasing at a higher clip, he's cut the chase a little bit, but he's also shown that he can hit pitches outside of the zone. He's just doing damage so consistently and he's hitting the ball in the air so consistently that it's hard to ignore a 22-year-old that has been able to do the damage that he has done this year. On top of that, the consistency. Because again, if the approach was going to do him in, it would have happened in AA, presumably, definitely in AAA, and it hasn't happened in either. So I think he's able to manage this controlled aggression that isn't hurting him.
Ryan Waldschmidt of the Arizona Diamondbacks is next. And again, we're working through 80 to 100 right now with these newcomers. Ryan Waldschmidt is kind of your second love among D-backs outfield prospects. How are there 2 of them along with Slade Caldwell?
Yeah, I mean, with Waldschmidt, the question was the defense, and it still kind of is a question. He tore his ACL in that draft or going into the draft year, and then still came back pretty quickly and then DH'd the whole year and just mashed. But what's impressive with him is he's a data darling. The contact rates are solid. The EVs are great, but the approach is just so impressive as well. The bat speed is really what stands out with him as well. It's quick, compact, but I mean he can really. I mean, it's a blur when he's getting his swing off, and he swings so hard sometimes his helmet almost falls off of his head. But when it's so short, compact, and quick to the ball, he has more time to make decisions and makes elite swing decisions in that regard. And then you're seeing him flash above average speed too, where he can actually swipe some bags and have that be a part of his game. And the defense is slowly getting a little bit better. But I think you have the potential for average hit and power and plus plate discipline with above average speed. If he can just get by in a corner, that's an above average regular.
Harry Ford of the Seattle Mariners. I know why he's back in because he's been one of the best hitters in AAA baseball so far this year, but how is he back in?
The defense just getting to a point where you can see it's at least an average big league defensive catcher was huge because it's probably going to be fringy hit. It's probably going to be fringy power. the 70 plate discipline was always going to be helpful for him. But then also seeing that plate discipline translate at the highest minor league level has been huge. But then also seeing that hit tool come along a little bit more. He made some adjustments. He was really struggling to get to four seam fastballs at the top last year. He's doing a much better job of that this year. He was very front foot heavy, not nearly the case this year. And you're seeing him, I think, hit harder line drives to all fields more, not necessarily selling out for lift. He's okay with hard line drives to all fields. And I like that better for a player of his archetype. The approach continuing to be great, though, and the defense now looking like it's big league average behind the dish really helps his profile.
88 is Aroon Escobar, the Philadelphia Phillies. Who?
He kind of came out of nowhere, but he was in the midst of a breakout last year, got hurt, and then I think it was double shin splints, and then now this year has followed that up with just a phenomenal start to his season at low A. Another guy that just seems to find the barrel consistently. It's average hit, above average plate discipline potential here, but then you have a guy that can just get his A+ swing off consistently too. Like he swings hard, but it's again that controlled aggression that is really impressive. And you're seeing him do it to all fields. You're seeing him start to slug even more in this Florida State League, which is hard to do. It's not going to be the best defensive profile there at second base, but when you have average hit and above average power, and you're getting into it pretty consistently, and at 20 years old with all the missed reps that he had, this is a guy that looks like he could be, a bat first second baseman who can, provide plenty of production.
Moving into the 90s, Ricky Tiedemann of the Blue Jays. Tiedemann was not in the top 100 at the beginning of the year. With so many graduations, he moves in.
Yeah.
What has he done while he's been on the shelf to improve his stock?
Just it's
nothing.
Funny. Nothing. Like he's getting closer to his return, and there's been a lot of positive reports from the Blue Jays in terms of hitting each marker and his progression. And honestly, a little bit of it was going back and just watching how freaking dominant this guy was. I think it's easy to forget about that too. And also looking at the injury history. And I think a lot of it was tied to that elbow that inevitably ended up getting fixed, hopefully here, where it wasn't like he had, shoulder issue, and then maybe some other issues that could have been separate from that elbow. It felt like they were delaying the inevitable with the forearm, with the biceps. And I'm hoping that you get the TJ here, he comes back and he's healthy. And I just think the chance of that when you have a 60 fastball, a potential 70 slider, and a potential 60 changeup, like that's still a top 100 prospect for me. Again, it seems like it could just be one issue that masqueraded as like several different smaller issues. So I'm hoping that he comes back from that this year. And that's the other part of it too, just getting closer to that return.
Organization mate is Trey Yesavage, also the Toronto Blue Jays, their first round pick last year. Free faller because of medical issues, or like
seemed to be the word.
Physical. Like it was something that popped up in his physical that teams did not like. He slipped into the 20s. I think it was 22 overall, but he's been one of the best arms in the minor league so far this year.
Yeah, and they let him dominate low A for a little bit and had him throw close to home there at the Dunedin complex, but since he's got up to high A, it's been more of the same in terms of overpowering hitters. Where
have you thought about that jump, by the way? Like that jump from low A Dunedin, Florida to high A Vancouver, British Columbia?
There can't be I've never thought about that, and there can't be a bigger difference, I don't think.
It's insane.
That's 100% why he was there then. I didn't even really think about that.
Yeah. Nuts.
That's how many miles do you think that is apart?
I mean, it's probably Miami to Seattle equivalent. Like it's the longest domestic trip in the U.S. Like Dunedin to Vancouver is insane.
It's outrageous. That is actually crazy. He's walked a few more guys in high A so far, but he's also only allowed 3 hits in 12 1/3 innings and just continues to dominate hitters when he is around the zone. The fastball has been, I think better than advertised in terms of the shape. And I know it's a high release, but he's getting decent carry on it. And the slider, I think, has always been underrated for him, where it is just gyro that plays up from that high release, and then a splitter that, of course, is going to play up off of that high release as well. So he's got the perfect arsenal for his release point. It's all going to come down to the command, but even it just being low A, when you're striking out 45% of batters through your first 10 starts, you're going to catch my attention. And I loved him out of college too. I thought he was comfortably the third, best college arm out of that class.
3 more guys that are new to the top 100 list. Brailer Guerrero of the Tampa Bay Rays. He's been on, then he's been off, then he's been back on. But you love him. Like I hear and read nothing about him, and then all of a sudden he's just in the 90s for you.
It's just a matter of him being available, right? Because when he was on the list, he was playing in the complex league, and then he blew his shoulder out on a swing, I believe. And then in 2024, he came back. He was looking as advertised at the complex, and then recurrence of the shoulder issue. So it's like, man, well, is this enough to keep him off? Well, he's 18 still. And now in low A, he has an 804 OPS despite all of the missed reps and the shoulder issues that he was dealing with. He's an above average runner who probably ultimately moves to a corner, but he's still going to get looks in center field and might be able to play there in a pinch. But when you're as impactful as this guy and there's some rhythm to his swing, it reminds me a little bit of Josue Briceno. He's a little bit stiffer, but there's some pattern aspects to it that are similar. The EVs are off the charts for an 18-year-old. He's already popped 115s. And yes, he puts the ball on the ground too much, but I think the swing is conducive to being able to elevate as he just continues to find more consistency. Remember, he lost a lot of reps. You have plus power potential, above average speed, and a feel to hit that I don't think is bad and continues to get better. And he's handled low A well, despite all the missed reps.
Got you. Two more guys. Tyson Lewis of the Cincinnati Reds, second round pick last year, high school kid, was awesome. On the shelf right now. Do you know why?
I do not know why. And is he on the shelf right now? He played yesterday.
I see. Oh, yeah, they might be off. I see Baseball Reference has 7-day IL, but they might be outdated.
I do see that too on MLB, but I think he's back. I think it's outdated. And minor league injuries are just impossible to keep up with. But Lewis this is probably one of the higher variance prospects, him and Brailer Guerrero. And that's kind of where we're at in this range. I mean, the Reds, it's a great pick already. It looks like just because of the upside that you potentially have here. He kind of had he had that 119 heard around the world, even though it was a ground ball. And honestly, I was skeptical. I thought that could have been a misread when he hit that 119 mile per hour ground ball in the Arizona Complex League. But then like a couple days later, he hit a 115 mile per hour home run. That definitely wasn't a misread. And then he hit a 112 mile per hour triple. And then I think already through 12 games, he's produced, and I understand it's the Arizona Complex League, but he's produced 8 batted balls, 105 plus, and he's produced 4 batted balls, 110 plus. This is a 19-year-old for the entirety of the season who's a plus runner who could potentially stick it short. He's aggressive, and there's swing and miss. And I think that's why he's at the Arizona Complex right now and not in low A. But when you have this level of power and speed combination already at 19 years old with the chance to stick it short, I'm going to roll the dice every day of the week.
Last but not least, Theo Gillen of the Tampa Bay Rays. Gillen was the 18th overall pick last year, and the whole idea around him was exciting project. Tooled out, has no idea how the intricacies of baseball work, but it seems like he's been amazing, and he didn't play any games of the complex at all in his pro career.
No, I mean, he probably would have been a higher draft pick had he not dealt with so many injuries through his through his amateur career, excuse me, where, you had, I think a torn labrum in 2022 and then knee and wrist issues. And then he missed the start of the 2025 season with a calf issue, but it's a really smooth swing from the left side. And he's 6'3", 200. It moved him off the dirt to the outfield, which I think as he gets more reps, he can develop into an average defender, at least in a corner. I think he can be above average, but there's a chance to be an average center fielder with the plus speed that he has. But I think what we're really seeing and what thrusted him onto the top 100 list is you have very advanced plate discipline for a guy that is a project. And then the power, like it was always, okay, we can see the power potential here, but he's 6'3", 200. Like how much more room is there to add? It's more going to be about the pattern of the swing. The power's been there so far. He's already popped to 112 this year. Mind you, he is also, 19 years old. And through 26 games, he's already posted, I believe it's 9 EVs north of 105 miles per hour. And that's for a guy that's been very patient and already doing it in low A and learning a new position in center field. I think you can start to see what could be closer to plus power potential here, which is really exciting when you have plus speed as well and a great approach.
So we got 25 newcomers to the top 100 down the hatch. Bon appetit.
That was fun. Thank you for the questions. And also, speaking of questions, you can join our Discord, which is linked in the episode description. I'm going to be answering top 100 questions all week. I'm always answering prospect questions all the time. That's part of the perks of the Discord, but I'm going to be very available answering all the questions that pertain to the top 100 all week long. So you can join the Discord with the link in the episode description. We have a special deal for the rest of the season. It's $35 for the rest of the season. And again, you get giveaways all the time. We have MLB General MLB Chat, Peter's Picks. We're talking college baseball, MLB Draft in there with our draft experts. Like, it is a blast. And I'm doing the box breaks, of course, as well. But figure it's a great time to plug it because I'll be answering all of your top 100 related questions in there. Again, link to join is in the episode description. Great way to support Just Baseball and help us keep everything not behind a paywall, which we're going to do anyways, but that's a big part of how we're able to do it. So we appreciate you. Any final thoughts, Jack?
I don't think so. It's a fun group. We're going to do biggest risers next go around?
Yep, which will be very fun because there
There we
are
go.
a lot of big risers there as well. As always, thank you for listening. If you could leave a rating or review, help us grow the show. Really appreciate it. And would love to have you in that Discord. And look forward to talking prospects with you later this week.